Cold Lotus Grace. Chapter 1, The Lang family is the eldest lady. Lang He was never the eye-catching presence. As the only woman in the Lang family, she should have a piece of sky, but unfortunately fate was unfair to her, and everyone in the Lang family was indifferent to her. Her father, Lang Onlin, is the head of the Lang family, but his attitude towards her is as cold as ice. His mother, Mrs. Lang, was seriously ill in bed and had not gotten up for several years. Lang He's life seems to be just a shadow in the corner of the Lang family, silent, as if it does not exist in the family's plans. Her sister-in-law Lang Manling always does not miss any opportunity to belittle her, and from time to time loudly tells Lang He's unbearable at family gatherings, and the aunt who always stands behind Lang Manling is sowing discord all the time, taking Lang He as a thorn in her side. Lang He has always been calm and light-hearted, but the Lang family rules are deep, and she didn't want to be held back by these trivial things. What she longs for most is to be able to accompany her mother through her last years and live a simple and stable life. But the heavens did not fulfill people's wishes, and the turmoil inside and outside the Lang family followed, and the peaceful days of Lang He could no longer continue. The turning point of all this came from her marriage. Grandmother, Mrs. Lang, inadvertently linked Lang He's marriage with the fourth young master of the Junwang mansion. This fourth young master, named Ling Yuancheng, is known as the most famous gentleman in the capital. Old Mrs. Lang felt that since Lang He was not likable, it was better to marry the county prince's mansion, so that the Lang family could also use this relationship to gain a trace of power. Lang He clearly knew that this marriage was destined to be unhappy, and she and Ling Yuancheng were just people from two different worlds. He is bent on pursuing a happy life, while she wants to live an ordinary life. However, fate pushed her to this point of no return. Chapter 2, The Wedding Night's Sudden Change. On the first night after marriage, Lang He saw Ling Yuanken's demeanor. The night of the roundhouse that she was looking forward to was disrupted by the sudden news of the concubine. The concubine was pregnant. Ling Yuancheng actually left her alone and left in a hurry, and Lang He faced the empty cave room alone. At that moment, Lang He smiled coldly in his heart. All this was expected by her. On the second day, she originally thought that she would be a little comforted, but she was found again. It turned out that Ling Yuancheng was drinking too much outside, causing some trouble, and returned home in embarrassment. Lang He couldn't help but mock in his heart. This was her husband, a man who had nothing to do and did nothing. However, just as Lang He's indifferent and contemptuous attitude towards this man gradually got used to it, an accident on the day of returning to the door surprised her. On the day of returning, Lang He's mother still never got up, and the attitude of the Lang family towards this marriage was not enthusiastic, and it could even be said that it was cold. Lang He couldn't help but feel a little resentful in her heart. After all, she was the daughter of the Lang family, but she had never received due attention. However, to her surprise, Ling Yuancheng was unusually firm in the inner hall of the Lang family to hold up her face, and saluted all the elders of the Lang family, never showing the slightest impatience. A trace of doubt appeared in Lang He's heart. The true face of this man seemed to be far from being as simple as it seemed. Chapter 3, The Storm in the Palace. Over time, Lang He gradually adapted to life in the palace. However, the rules of the palace were cumbersome and dark. Ling Yuanken's concubine room was like clouds. Lang He didn't mind this. She had long been used to being ignored and despised. But there was one thing she couldn't ignore, and that was the struggle between Ling Yuanken's occasional concern and indifference. Sometimes in the dead of night, he would casually tell her something about his past. Sometimes he would be cold to her and mercilessly away from her. Lang He began to understand that this man's heart did not belong to her entirely, and that deep in his heart, there was an unsolved secret. And Lang He is no longer the woman who endured silently at the beginning. She began to use her skills and wisdom in the palace, and gradually took control of the situation. She and the concubines, aunts, and even the women around Ling Yuancheng from all sides launched a contest with surging dark tides. She knew that if she didn't fight for it, she would never have a real foothold. Lang He is not the kind of person who can be bullied casually. She has long known that in such an environment, only the strong can survive. Whether it is the deceit in the palace or the turmoil in the outside world, she is fearless, although the hidden dangers behind her are everywhere. She began to intrigue with Ling Yuanken's concubines, and after a few seemingly harmonious family gatherings at the round table, Lang He gradually grasped the power in the palace. And Ling Yuancheng, under the seemingly idle appearance, actually hides amazing wisdom and skill. He is not as Lang He thinks. He only cares about eating, drinking, prostituting and gambling. Chapter 4. The intrigue and love behind it. Just as Lang He gradually consolidated his position in the palace, Ling Yuanquan's past gradually surfaced. It turned out that Ling Yuancheng was not just a gentleman. His father, the king of the county, had been caught in a political conspiracy, and Ling Yuancheng was drawn into this chess game because of this. Lang He suddenly realized that Ling Yuanquan's alienation and indifference to her was not ruthless, but a deep helplessness. Gradually, Lang He found that her feelings for Ling Yuancheng also began to change subtly. She is no longer a simple revenge mentality, but gradually understands this man's struggle and helplessness. In this struggle between power and love, the two finally begin to really get closer to each other. However, their relationship is still full of twists and turns. The conspiracy within the palace is not over. Lang He still needs to face countless challenges and temptations, and Ling Yuanquan's secret, can she withstand the test of this relationship? Chapter 5. The Mistress of the Palace. As Lang He gradually emerged in the palace, Ling Yuancheng also began to slowly change his attitude towards her. The indifferent fourth young master of the royal mansion in the past was gradually attracted by Lang He's wisdom and courage. The two are no longer antagonists who are suspicious of each other, but begin to support each other and fight side by side. However, Lang He is not satisfied with just being an obscure princess. She wants power, a position that can control everything. She finally understood that only by becoming the true master mother of the palace could she have the right to speak in this world. And in this intriguing palace, she finally gained a firm foothold and won Ling Yuanquan's love and affection. Chapter 6. The Dark Tide Inside and Outside the Palace. After Lang He's position in the palace gradually stabilized, he still couldn't let go of the vigilance in his heart. She knows that in this power arena, any slight negligence can lead to disaster. In particular, Ling Yuanquan's father, the county king, and other members of the royal palace were still suspicious of her, the eldest lady, and were always wary of her existence. And Ling Yuanquan's attitude still made Lang He incomprehensible. Although he cared about Lang He on the surface, and even began to support her in some things, Lang He felt that there was always an invisible wall in his heart, separating her from him. Lang He understood that there was a huge secret behind Ling Yuanquan's indifference, and this secret was closely related to the power structure of the county king's mansion. At this time, new fluctuations began to appear within the palace. The various concubines, aunts, and stewards in the palace secretly began to form alliances. On the one hand, they felt threatened by Lang He's growing power, and on the other hand, they were dissatisfied with Ling Yuanquan's attitude towards Lang He. Lang He knew that this turbulent battle could no longer rely on pure wisdom and strategy to deal with it. She needs more support and resources to get her ground. Chapter 7. Lang He's schemes. Lang He began to strengthen his ties with various important people in the palace, especially with the elders who had not yet completely sided with one side in the power struggle. She is no longer just an unknown woman, but takes the future of the palace as her own responsibility, and begins to gradually plan the expansion of her power in the palace. The core of all this is still Ling Yuancheng. Lang He knew that only by fully understanding Ling Yuanquan's past and thoughts could she truly crack this chess game. However, Ling Yuancheng has never revealed too many secrets, especially the tortuous past between his father, the king of the county, and Lang He's mother, which has always been the deepest pain in his heart. Lang He's mind gradually turned to the power structure of the Junwang mansion. She found that the supporters of the county king were not only those old ministers in the palace, but also some powerful people in the capital. The huge interests behind these people even involve several important figures in the foreign regime. Lang He understood that if he wanted to completely change all this, in addition to tearing apart Ling Yuanquan's heart knot, he also needed to find out all the loopholes in the county king's mansion. At a banquet in the palace, Lang He skillfully chatted with an old minister of the county palace, and learned from him that Ling Yuanquan's father, the county king, had made certain deals with some high-ranking officials in the imperial court. And these transactions are the fundamental reason why the county king can keep his position. Lang He deduced a key clue from this information: the reason why Ling Yuancheng was so indifferent to himself was not ruthless, but forced by his father's political conspiracy. He was reluctant to involve himself in the family's power struggle, and in order to protect Lang He from needless involvement, he deliberately kept his distance. Lang He's heart moved. This was the opportunity for her to fight back. She decided that she had to use her wisdom to pry open this relationship and gain more initiative for herself. underscore 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 un. Chapter 8. Uncovering the Secrets of the Past. Lang He began to secretly investigate the past between Ling Yuancheng and the County King, and she walked step by step into the past that had been sealed for many years. After some covert inquiry, Lang He finally uncovered Ling Yuancheng's past. It turned out that his mother was secretly framed by the Lang family during a political struggle, resulting in her death. Ling Yuancheng has always been reluctant to face this past, and he doesn't want to implicate Lang He. However, Lang He did not give up because of this. On the contrary, she knew better in her heart that this was not just a family fight, but also a larger political game. Lang He decided, no matter what, to help Ling Yuancheng get rid of the shadow of his father's county king, and make the truth of all this public. In the middle of the night, Lang He called Ling Yuancheng to the study of the palace, and she whispered to him, Yuancheng, you have carried all these secrets for too long. If you continue to dodge, it will always be pressed on your heart, and you will not be able to breathe. You can't afford to let yourself get caught up in it for the sake of protecting me. Ling Yuancheng was silent for a long time, and finally raised his head, his eyes full of struggle and pain. Lang He, I don't want you to get involved in this deceitful power game, you shouldn't know this. Lang He gently held his hand, but I already know, Yuancheng. I am not the weak woman who can only be protected, I will accompany you to face all this, whether it is the shadow of the past or the storm of the future. Ling Yuancheng finally nodded, with a hint of determination in his eyes. At this moment, he finally let go of the burden of the past, and decided to face the challenges of the future together with Lang He. Underscore 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 un. Chapter 9. The Storm Rises Again. Lang He and Ling Yuancheng teamed up to expose the conspiracy of the County King's mansion and successfully tore apart the political deal between the County King and the Lang family. When the truth came out, the magnates of the capital were shocked, and the relationship between the Lang family and the County Prince's mansion was completely changed by this public scandal. However, this revelation is not the end, but a new beginning. The shadow of the Junwang mansion had not completely dissipated, and Lang He and Ling Yuancheng were still facing tremendous pressure from the outside world. Lang He knows that all these changes are far from over, but she is no longer the unknown woman she was at the beginning. What she wants is not just the status of the palace, but the power that can change the fate of this entire dynasty. Her gaze is firm, and her steps are becoming more steady. Underscore 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 un. Ending. The true mistress of the palace. Lang He finally stood firm in the position of the master mother of the palace. She not only won Ling Yuancheng's affection, but also successfully reversed the situation in the struggle of the entire palace. She used her wisdom and tenacity to gain respect and fear inside and outside the palace, and Ling Yuancheng, accompanied by her, finally walked out of the shadow of her father's conspiracy of the County King. Lang He, the once neglected Miss Lang family, eventually became the core figure of the palace and led the palace to a new future. Her name will always be remembered on the stage of power in the capital.